Good afternoon, viewers, and thanks for attending this session. Firstly, of course, I'd like to thank the William Buckland Foundation. Obviously, at Nuffield, none of us can go on our trips and our travels without investors. William Buckland have been a great investor for years, and I'm sure they will continue to be into the future. I'd like to thank the Nuffield team. The support staff have been brilliant from the START conference there in Adelaide 2 years ago. The CSC, GFPs, help with presentations and obviously help with report writing as well. They've been terrific. And a couple other mentors, I won't mention Pete, but a couple other ones was Roma and Adam as well. They've also been there for advice. And of course, lovely wife Michaela, my parents, 3 kids, Seamus, Ailish and Cassidy. They've been terrific and they've been there to run the farm whilst away. Great support all the way through and Michaela's here today in the crowd. Background on myself, been involved in dairy heifer grazing, contract calf rearing and pasture agronomist. And also just this year actually started a dairy farming business at Boondaroo Dairy. So it's been a good experience for us and a steep learning curve. Topic, how agricultural organisations engage with farmers. Now, when I say ag organisations, I am including advocacy and lobby groups, but also R&D, or research and development and extension corporations as well. So the topic aims to discover how industry levy organisations engage with their levy payer to determine research and extension that was representative of the wider industry needs, not just those few who are involved heavily. Yet also how they communicated with their farmer investors about their research they could offer them for improved farm practices. In addition, the topic also endeavours to discover how industry advocacy groups engage with grassroots farmers to determine policy positions on agricultural issues that were truly representative of the industry's views. Now, why this topic? Well, from an early age I got involved with a local dairy discussion group. That was just what you did in our local area of Garvoc and Eklund. It's called the Eklund Discussion Group. So, and I certainly heard this quote as you see up there. That same sentiment ran through that discussion group, that there was a bit of a breakdown in communication between the levy groups and the advocacy groups about what research was being conducted, why was it being conducted, how did you determine those research topics, and then also a breakdown in the extension from the findings. And in addition, they didn't really have a full understanding of who was representing them and how did they come to those policy positions. So Nuffield gave me the opportunity to explore that a bit further from other parts of the world. And on those other parts of the world, went to 6 countries specifically for my study topic, visiting 25 ag organisations and cross-checked their claims with 45 farmers in each country. So I appreciate the time they give me, and the photos up there just demonstrated a few of the places I went to. So I set out with 5 main objectives. I saw these 5 objectives as the key influences on how farmers were engaged with the ag organisations, also in ways which promote further engagement by farmers by making it easier and more worthwhile for them to do so. So these were to research different membership models, that was in the advocacy and lobby space, to investigate communication methods, to examine governance structures and how that impacted influence of farmers, engagement of farmers, staffing structures, and how groups sold the value of engagement to farmers. So we want you to be engaged, but why? And secondly, in that same objective, was how these agricultural organisations sold their value proposition. What is the benefit of being a member, or what is the benefit of paying a levy? And of course the end goal is to have Happy Farmers Day every day, which we all know is going to be pretty tough. Membership models, findings from those objectives. I found that fair entry-level options and simplicity was the most conducive to greater number of engagement. American Farm Bureau was a good example of that. They have a simplified flat fee system, open to all comers, and they certainly had great clout in advocacy. And they had no models of percentages or how much you pay per acre or per cow. It was a simple flat fee system and certainly had a greater number of members I've come across. So I certainly found, because of those findings, that probably for the greater sake of engagement, it was preferable to have more members paying less rather than have less farmers paying more. Stronger partnerships with youth ag groups. New Zealand and Ireland, I found, were the two highlights that had strong numbers in these areas. They, unfortunately though, they saw about 25 to 30% drop off to the open age groups. Now, the youth groups, they all had simplified flat fee systems, encouraging to all comers who wanted to come along, most welcoming, but there was a breakdown there to go to the next level. So, and they all claimed to run field days in conjunction and shared staff or had shared meetings, but to take the next step to possibly incorporate was a avenue there to improve that. And lastly, in membership models was broader industry memberships. New Zealand Farmers Federation in particular have recently discovered a great benefit of targeting rural professionals to come on board and be paying members. So they saw rural professionals as being able to help sell their message in their daily role, but also to provide feedback to them on the issues that are facing those farmers that they would see as part of their role. And the rural professionals were quite happy to contribute to an organisation that they knew they also survived off. NFU UK have an option there, as you can see on the screen, called NFU Countryside Membership. These are available to basically anyone in the rural area that wants to contribute. Often, just like here in Australia, these rural towns live off the cow's back or the sheep's back, and up until recently they had no way of actually being able to support that industry they live off. They now have that option. It's been quite popular in the early stages, and it also provides NFU UK the avenue to communicate, provide two-way feedback, but also explain some of the issues that sometimes can come into conflict between rural towns and farmers. Findings from my objective of effective communication. I found on my travels, wherever I went actually, there was an over-reliance on written communication, including social media. Whilst no doubt it's the easiest and the cheapest, I also found it's the laziest and by far from the most effective way. Stats.com say that only 18% of generic emails get opened, and when I asked those 25 ag organisations, can you explain, give me some examples of how you communicate with your members? Oh, we send a weekly newsletter, we send a monthly update, we do a post on social media every few days. Okay, and what sort of feedback do you get from that? Not a lot. So these generic emails and generic messages on including social media, and they're often very non-specific in their generic nature, of course. So after a while, farmers lost interest, weren't opening them, unliked the page. So I think there's still options there, still needs to be used going forward, of course, but the ag organisations can improve this by building their database of information and start having more relevant, short, sharp, targeted information going to the farmer. Physical, second there in communication, physical presence preferred by farmers. A quote from a New Zealand dairy farmer says, "I'd like to see who I'm dealing with." Certainly the farmers I met appreciate the extra effort made by the ag organisations to see or speak to them directly, and we're more likely to actively and positively interact with them. And of course, like we all know, it's harder to say no to someone when they're looking at you in the eye. And of course, physical presence promotes the most effective communication, which is two-way, to be able to explain what you can offer, explain what we've been doing in a advocacy space or in a research space, and then hear back from the farmer, okay, does this suit your needs, or what else can we be doing to help improve this? You tell me what we should be doing. Not the same with written. And lastly, community involvement. Probably the best example was Macron Affirma, they offer a suite of different social activities, so do New Zealand Young Farmers as a matter of fact, that can get farmers to a local event not based on an ag invitation but on a social invitation. Macron Affirma offer debating, speaking, karaoke, all sorts of things. Gets farmers along in a different angle, I suppose, but then they incorporate ag into their meetings. But also, I see an avenue for this social, social options given, especially in Australia. We know that centralisation of some of our rural towns are facing shrinking populations, so there's an opportunity there for these ag groups to be the social gel going forward, because often the farmers are what's left. Governance findings. New Zealand potato farmer, who's also a Nuffield scholar, gave me the quote, "People are more willing to belong to an organisation if they feel like they can make a real difference." Excuse me. Clear identifiable pathways for contribution from the bottom up. And that includes, I believe, voting rights to members at local level, entry level, for state and federal decision makers. Grassroots branches and committees, so that's advocacy or research, are they the past, the present or the future? I pose that question. The answer I got everywhere I went was they are all three, the past, the present and the future. A quote here from Jonathan Wilkinson from the NFU in Wales said, "Local branches are the bedrock of any successful lobby groups." Another one from NFU UK. "Members love the personal nature of our communication that our decentralised branches provide." These grassroots branches provide policy and research led from the bottom up. They are often the first point of contact, these local committees and branches, that new entrants to an organisation can have. They're more likely and feel more comfortable to attend these localised branches and committees because they're talking about localised issues that's going to directly affect them. They're generally more likely to come along because they know people that are there, and if they do have a field officer, these ag groups, they should know them as well and they can be directly asked to come along. So I feel if these are lost going forward, it's going to be a real detriment. Leadership elections are great tools for engagement. NFU UK were brilliant at this. They do whistle-stop tours basically where their potential leaders go around to all the regional towns, they go into the halls, they campaign and they spruik to their grassroots members about why you should vote for me. And when doing so, they get tested directly from those members saying, well, why should I vote for you? What are you going to do for me? And these are the issues that I most want you to concentrate on. So this results in campaign-tested leaders, those that have been on the front line and heard the issues directly. Some real opportunities there in Australia, I believe. Right, staffing structures, recruiting the right people. NZ Dairy were excellent at this. They have fine-tuned their recruitment campaign, and it certainly is a rigorous one. But they have role plays and impromptu ambushes as part of the process. They believe there are three main attributes to a successful field officer. They include, must be highly energetic, they must be able to create, build and maintain strong working relationships with farmers, are the two most important ones. And the third one, they should have a reasonable knowledge of the industry. Now, I found that interesting, which says that not necessarily be an expert on what they're talking about, just be an expert on how to talk. Local field officers. These, as mentioned earlier, physical presence preferred by farmers. Farmers like to build relationships, people deal with people. If you don't have local field officers, you're going to struggle in this area from the start. These are the soldiers on the front line representing the organisation, keeping the fingers on the pulse to local issues, being at every local event and representing the organisation, local ag shows, local fetes. And furthermore to that, it certainly helps if they are involved in their wider community that they're locally based at, not just the ag community. NFU Wales again, I found a bloke there I interviewed, heavily involved in his local rugby club. He found that as a great outside avenue in a less formal way to build a relationship with his farmers. Everyone, similar here to rural Australia, everyone in rural Wales plays rugby, they all go along, all the family go along, and this was another great avenue to create, maintain and build those strong relationships. So community entrenchment is also important for local field officers. Office-based staff in the field. Great benefits to the organisation, I found, and the farmers if policy and administration staff spent some time in the field. NFU UK do twice yearly farm tours for headquarters staff. This helps connection and comprehension to farmers and their issues. Quote from Guy Smith, "It's ever so important that our office team have a first-hand understanding of the farmers we represent." New Zealand Farmers Federation also have some national policy team. They take it to the next step. That could quite rightly be based in the headquarters office. However, they strategically place them in the regional areas to still concentrate on national issues, but to be there as a stronger brand presence in the area and to be involved in that local community. This, I found, when asked New Zealand farmers, was a real benefit to promoting New Zealand Farmers Federation. I was lucky enough to go on a farm visit there with the Agricultural Horticultural Development Board, and that photo up there, it was a 2-on-1 farm visit myself. And the other map there is a map of the Farmers Union of Wales and their 11 offices they have throughout Wales, and they have the highest percentage of local field officers to member ratio. And also, any member can travel less than 45 minutes and be at a local office. And it was no coincidence that I found they had certainly very high engagement levels and high satisfaction surveys. Obviously tough to replicate here in Australia. Value of engagement. Brings greater clout in advocacy. This photo up there you see there is testament to that. So US presidents for some time have been attending the American Farm Bureau AGM because they understand roughly between 6 and 8 million rural Americans pay their membership to the Farm Bureau, and this certainly holds a lot of weight when trying to advocate to the President but also other congressmen. Also, greater confidence in accuracy in policy and research. It was certainly makes sense that the more participation you get from grassroots farmers in setting policy and research directions leads to stronger representation and results. That's just, well, it was obvious to me, I should say. Now, a part of all this, there's got to be some onus on the farmer too, of course. No organisation I interviewed didn't want more input and engagement from their farmers, and I've come across very few farmers that don't have an opinion on the industry. So this is the part of the engagement that we're trying to work on. Lastly, about that value proposition, farmer-led objectives and assessment. Farmer-led objectives and assessment. What I mean there is, if you can have strategic plans, objectives set from the grassroots level, from the bottom up, on a 1, 3, 5-year basis, this is what a swell of numbers want this organisation that we've contributed to focus on over this time period. Then we'll see how you go and we'll come back and assess it over each time period. So when you come to me and you say you want me to renew the levy or you want me to renew my membership, you show me those results that have been set by us and assessed by us, then I'll be much more willing to do so. Recommendations from all those findings: greater focus on physical engagement rather than written, simplified membership fees, as I say, more farmers paying less rather than less farmers paying more. Great opportunity for wider community to be involved. Let's open the net. If they want to contribute, they can help spread the word of ag, and we can help spread the word of ag. Local branches and committees are critical at the entry-level engagement and are the bedrock. Majority of leaders are farmers elected by leaders, especially in high decision-making areas, but even more importantly in financial decision-making areas. There was a couple I come across that had farmers that were on boards that weren't elected and were chosen by CEOs or higher level staff. This certainly created some angst in the farming community that I interviewed. I say majority there because I do believe there is a place for independents on boards as well. Increased investment in local field officers and regionally based staff. As mentioned, this is the front line really to improving engagement. have clear farmer-led objectives to set direction and demonstrate value and performance. Next steps from here, more farmers and relations of farmers, so that's that wider community, to get involved and have some input resources. A lot of the commodities all need healthy soils, so they work together in those areas to share information. And hopefully the next step is a greater strength in advocacy, policy and research. I'm not sure to go as far as the French do, but I think we can improve in that area. Lastly, that was a photo I took in New Zealand. Now I just think Australia are working hard on our water use efficiency. I reckon the Kiwis can do work a bit harder as well. That sprinkler's been left in one spot for a little too long. And just thanks again to the family, Nuffield, William Buckland Foundation, and thanks to all for listening. Thank you.